Final week, Friday, the crucifixion and burial. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified Jesus and the two thieves, one on his right hand and one on his left. This was the 3rd hour of the 14th day, 9 a.m. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Pilate wrote a sign that said, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." He wrote it in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, and put it on the cross. Many of the Jews read this sign, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near Jerusalem. The chief priests protested to Pilate, "Change it. Write, he said he was the King of the Jews." Pilate said, "What I wrote stays." The soldiers divided Jesus' clothes among them, separating them into 4 shares, to every soldier a share, and also the coat. The coat was woven without a seam, so they decided not to tear it, but to cast lots for it. This fulfilled the scripture that said, "They will cast lots for my clothes." Psalm 22, verse 18. People who were walking past sneered at him. They said, "You were going to tear down the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, and you can't even save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests and elders mocked him. The rulers said, "Let him save himself. He said he was the King of the Jews. Let him come down off the cross, and we will believe in him." Others said, "He trusted in God. Let God save him now. If God really wants him, we will see if he truly is God's son." Even the soldiers and the thieves being crucified with him mocked him. One of the robbers who was beside him continued to mock him, saying, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us." But the other thief rebuked the first, saying, "Don't you fear God? We are being punished for what we have done wrong, but this one is innocent." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus said, "Truly, today you will be with me in paradise." Jesus' mother stood near the cross, along with his aunt, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. John, the disciple who is the best friend of Jesus, also stood by. Jesus asked John to take care of his mother. "Mother, here is your son. John, here is your mother." John took her into his home from then on. From noon, the 6th hour, until 3 p.m., the 9th hour, the entire time Jesus was dying on the cross, there was darkness on the land. As the 9th hour grew close, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." That meant, my God, why have you turned away from me?" When Jesus took the sin of the world on his body, God the Father could not be with him. Some men heard him cry out and said, "He's calling for Elijah." Jesus knew that his work as a man was now finished. He had completed the first part of his mission, to serve as the perfect and only sacrifice for the sins of all the world. He said, "I thirst." Someone took a sponge and dipped it into vinegar. He put it on the end of a hyssop reed and held it up for Jesus. The rest said, "Let him be. Let us see if Elijah comes to save him." When Jesus had taken the vinegar, he said, "It is finished." He cried out in a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I give my spirit." Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. At that moment the veil of the temple was torn from top to bottom. The earth and rocks were split, tombs were opened, and many of the righteous who had died came back to life. They would go into the city of Jerusalem and appear to many people after the resurrection of Jesus 3 days later. When the centurion, a Roman soldier, over 100 men, and the other soldiers saw the earthquake and darkness and all that was happening, they were terrified. The centurion and those with him glorified God, saying, "Truly, this was the Son of God." Many women were there, watching from afar, who had followed Jesus from Galilee, serving him. This included Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger, and Joseph, Salome, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee, James and John. When the multitude saw what had happened, they went home, beating their breasts. But the women and all his friends remained at a distance, watching. It was the day of preparation when the Passover lamb was killed. The next day, Saturday, was a special Sabbath, the day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Because the Jews did not want the bodies still hanging on the crosses during the Sabbath, they asked Pilate to have the soldiers break the legs of the dying men, which would speed up their death. The soldiers broke the legs of the two thieves, but when they came to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead. One soldier thrust a spear into Jesus' side, and blood and water came out, already separated. The Apostle John watched this and was a witness to it. This was done to fulfill the Scriptures, "Not one of his bones will be broken," and "they will look on him whom they pierced." Evening was approaching on the Jewish day of preparation. That is the day before the special Sabbath, and the bodies needed to be taken off the crosses and buried. Joseph of Arimathea went boldly to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Joseph was a good and righteous man who was a member of the council. He had not consented to their mock trial and killing of Jesus. He was also secretly a follower of Jesus, and a rich man who recently had a new tomb made for himself. Pilate was surprised to hear that Jesus had died quickly, and called the centurion to make sure it was so. Then he gave the body to Joseph. Nicodemus brought a mixture of around 100 pounds of myrrh and aloes. He and Joseph wrapped the body of Jesus in a long linen cloth which Joseph had purchased, along with the spices, which was the way the Jews buried their dead. They laid the body in Joseph's new tomb, carved out of rock. They rolled a great stone over the entrance and left. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary had followed to see where they were going to bury Jesus. They went home to prepare spices and ointments. On the Sabbath day, they rested. The chief priests and Pharisees gathered together with Pilate. They said, "Sir, we remember that this deceiver said while he was still alive that he would rise again after 3 days. Command that the tomb be secured until after the 3rd day. Then the disciples won't be able to come and steal his body and tell the people he is risen from the dead. That would be worse than ever." Pilate said, "Take a guard and make it as secure as you can." So they secured the tomb by setting up a guard and sealing the stone.